The story was written in 2011. It's 8 of 25. We Were Methodists. From the book The Little Boys Go to Heaven by Stukin, available at Amazon. Summer 1954, East Texas. My mother was born into and grew up in the Southern Baptist Church. From what she said, I don't think she ever missed a service while she belonged to the church. Giving the Lord a couple of hours a week is small repayment for all he has given us, was her motto. She repaid through different churches, though. It was always clear that she drew great strength from her belief. As far back as I can remember, she dragged my brother and me along, trying to share her faith and strength with us. I never saw her father in the Southern Baptist Church, though she said he belonged and was devout. She could never explain how a girl who lost her mother at a young age and had an indifferent father could become such a devout believer. You come to believe what you come to believe, is what she said when I asked why she believed. When I was 6 or 7, my mother, older brother, and I left the Southern Baptist Church and became Methodists. Not Methodist proper, though. My mother said that our Methodist preacher settled in East County, Texas, and decided East County Methodist Church was preferable to East County Church. We were never affiliated with the National Methodist Church. They had their nationwide organization, but we never attempted to join. The preacher told her they never commented on our borrowing their name, but that's assuming that was some comment they could have made. They might not have noticed us during much of the early years. Our church was small. We might see 10 or 12 worshipers on a good Sunday, most of whom only passed through the county. Many folks passed through in those days, most trying to escape the Great Depression they hoped they could leave behind. Some were just running for the sake of running. My mother never explained clearly why she left the Baptist church. You have to do what you think is right. You can never compromise on what you think is right, were the answers I got when I asked her, hoping for clear, definite answers. She would never get any clearer than that. She never pointed to an event that caused her to leave. She was always unclear when she talked about her faith and her church. The county was mostly Southern Baptist, and I longed for a clear reason why we chose to be Methodist when our roots were in the Southern Baptist Church. We could have been Baptist. My brother and I were never actually Baptist. We were too young for their baptism. The preacher called our first Sunday, attending Methodist services. Are there any present who would like to be baptized into the Methodist Church today? Please come forward now. He spoke to a congregation of less than 10 as if he spoke to a congregation of more than 100. My mother left my brother and me in the metal chairs that substituted for pews and walked forward. She was the only person there to walk forward. The preacher looked at my brother and me, pointed his index finger at us, and asked, Sister, have your little ones been baptized? No, Pastor, they're not of age. Every child of God is born of sufficient age to be baptized into our faith, sister. We're all born fully aware. You can bring them forth if you would like. They will understand. Their hearts and souls will understand. Their minds will soon understand. Bring them forward if you would like. I'm not sure why the age of baptism would provide a dividing point between the two religions. But when you're trying to set yourself apart, I guess you grasp whatever small distinction you might think to create. I never made an effort to fully distinguish between the two, and I never made any effort to learn anything about any of the other churches I knew existed. I know we believed, but I would never seriously try to find out why or in what. When we joined, there was no building for our service. In the early days, we met wherever the preacher could arrange. Every Friday, we'd go into town to find out where service would be held that Sunday. At first, it was a barn lent to us by the sheriff. Then we moved to the schoolhouse, and after another couple of years, we moved into a building built for our services. My mother waved us forward, and we walked up to the front of the church. We knelt beside her and bowed our heads as she gestured for us to do. The preacher spoke, followed his words with a few drops of water, and we received baptisms as Methodist or near Methodist. We started taking the bread and wine on the fourth Sunday of every month with the others in the congregation. We were baptized in Sheriff Jim Grant's barn. Our preacher, Reverend Bernard Sykes, was from one of the Carolinas. The people here didn't take to his message right away. That was the problem of his not belonging to any proper faith and his manner also. First, he seemed half crazy to me. He'd get up to his makeshift bull pit, look around at each person there, look them straight in the eye, start nodding his head, and he'd always start with the same first line. Brothers and sisters, it warms my heart to see you here today. Today we'll be taking a few steps further on this journey through life, a journey that will end when we walk through the pearly gates, come to rest in the lap of Jesus. He'd then go into his sermon, continually nodding his head and sometimes visibly shaking all over. Mama loved him. His congregation came to love him as well. He matured. He learned to maintain his composure, control his voice, and relax the faithful with a smile. He also realized that a scowl was never comforting to anyone. Yes, yes, he learned to comfort. After Mama's father passed and she inherited much from him, she started giving more to the Methodist Church. The church began to flourish. We began to see converts from town. My mother was the kind of person others gravitated to. Others gravitated to her and to her money. She was now the town's leading citizen. I don't think she ever gave any of that any thought. All she knew was that the church God had led her to was thriving. People who shared her values were coming together to worship. She seemed to me to be more the focal point of the church than the preacher. People greeted her before they greeted the preacher. At least that's what my memory tells me. Still, she remained closed-mouthed about her leaving the Baptist church. My father had his story. That scrawny little preacher man, he took your mama away from the Baptist church. Her being Baptist all her life. Yes, she lets this little man take her away from the church she was born to, from communion with people who know and love her. And what for? Services in a barns with leaky roofs, congregating in open pastures. She took her sons away from their grandparents. The devil got into that woman. The devil in the form of a scrawny little Methodist man who's not really Methodist. Shortly after my father left us, my brother Jack died, and my mother became closer to Reverend Sykes. She began to seek his private counsel, and she encouraged me to do likewise. He became her closest confidant, my mother's closest friend, and a confidant of sorts to me as well. I don't know what she lost when she left the Baptist church, but she seemed to mourn the loss even after joining another church. She always showed a pained expression on her face when we passed the church as we went into and returned from town. And she lost her father. She made the split with him a few years before I was born. She made a lot of difficult choices, too many probably. She chose to walk away from her father when she married my father. She chose to walk away from her church for a reason she would not put into words. Difficult choices, maybe bad choices, but you can never know more about what's in a person's head than they are willing to tell you. She only wanted to do what she thought was right, but what's right gets lost amid what's human in this human world. Much of what she thought was right was probably only what was human. And finally, she lost me as well. I blamed my life on her. I took a wife who she decided I should take. I could not make any of life's decisions on my own. The one decision I finally made was to stop seeing her. I stopped calling her and I stopped taking her calls. Difficult choices, bad decisions, but you never know what's happening in your head unless somebody tells you. I hadn't seen her in more than 3 years when I got a call from the family doctor, the same doctor who delivered my brother Jack and me. He called me and told me my mother needed me. When I arrived at my mama's house, the doctor greeted me at the door. He nodded his head and reached out his hand for me to shake. I haven't seen you in such a long time, young man. How have you been? You look well. Time seems to have been good to you. Your mama has an illness that I don't think she can defeat. She's in a great deal of pain. I've given her something to ease her suffering, but it isn't sufficient at times. She keeps asking for you when she's able to speak. Why haven't you been here? Young folks get busy and forget to tend to important things. How old is that little girl of yours? That was a joyous day for all when I brought her into the world. Is she here with you? She can come by later, but I'm not sure you want her to see your mother in her present state. How old did you say she was? She's still a small thing, isn't she? How long has it been since your mother saw her? Too long, I bet. Nope, I haven't seen you in such a long time. I followed him to her bedroom. I was greeted at the door by the most awful smell. I looked at the doctor, intending to inquire about the smell. Instead, he gave me a head nod in the direction of my mama. She was always a slight woman, but she had gotten so thin I wasn't sure it was her. She opened her eyes and I saw it was. I thought of all the time I had spent looking into those eyes, begging. For what, I'm still unsure. It hit me all at once what I had done, what I had walked away from, what I had lost. I felt my heart sink, and still I looked into her eyes, begging. This time I knew for what. Forgiveness. A smile on her face and a slight movement of her hand conveyed the message she sent to me. Everything will be all right, my Joseph. I could hear, though the words didn't come from her mouth. She opened her mouth to speak, could only muster another smile for me. I could hear her say the words I heard her say so many times in my youth. Smile a little smile for me. I smiled slightly at her, reached out and took her hand in mine. She closed her eyes, and I swear my heart stopped until the doctor told me that she was resting. I sat beside her bed and kept in man for the next few weeks. I was watching her rest when the doctor came by on one of his rounds. After a quick examination, he shook his head while looking at me and said, Your mama has passed. The Methodist preacher tried to talk me out of it. Your mother made her choice in life to belong to our Methodist church, and you have no right to change that decision after she has passed. I have every right, Reverend. She was my mother. I shouldn't have to say. She was born into the Southern Baptist Church, and she will be buried from the church. I don't know why she left the church, but she has to return to it to be buried. Just as I had returned home shortly before my mother's passing, she had to return to her home here on earth, and that home was the Southern Baptist Church that she was born to. I went to the church and met with the preacher. He was a young man. I'm here for Reverend Lee, I said. Reverend Lee passed away a few years ago. I have taken over the services and continue to do the good work of the Lord. Reverend Cross at your service. I'm sorry I didn't know about Reverend Lee. My name is Joseph Jameson, Reverend Cross. I don't know if you've heard my name, but as a servant of the Lord, I have to ask you for some consideration. Of course I've heard your name. I don't think we've ever met, though. I nodded my head. My mother, Julia Jameson, has recently passed. She was born into this church, and I would beg of you to allow her to be buried from this church. Of course, Brother Jameson. I have a further request. We became Methodists. She chose Reverend Bernard Sykes of Methodist Church as her pastor. I would be very much in your debt if you would allow Reverend Sykes to be the officiant at her funeral. I have already decided to make a significant gift to your church, which is in no way reliant on you granting my request. I understand your church does great work in this community, and the gift will be given to ensure your work goes forward unencumbered by any need for funding. Brother Jameson, gift or no gift, Reverend Sykes is more than welcome to come seize our pulpit to officiate for your mother's funeral. It means a lot to this church and to me for you to have chosen this church as her last home on earth. Brother Jameson, there is no difference between the houses of worship. We worship the same God. Some of us while kneeling, some while standing. Some unfortunate souls must worship while on their backs. But you didn't need to ask for your preacher to guide your mother's path into heaven from my pulpit. You only needed to tell me. She was laid to rest in our family portion of the county cemetery next to Jack. Her father was on the opposite side of Jack. There were other family members of her father's, I assumed, that I could not identify. All had been laid to rest before I was born. She had joined a congregation of another sort. I knelt down at her grave to say my last goodbye to her. I began to cry. I wished I had been a better son. I wished I hadn't abandoned her. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry, Mama, were the only words I could say. I didn't think to tell her I loved her and I missed her. I'm sorry, Mama. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see the Methodist preacher standing over me. He had tears running down his face. He told me my mama was all right now. He said, in fact, she was better now than she had ever been. He said it was expected that I mourn my loss, but not for her, for she was in a much better place now. I wanted to ask him about his tears. I wanted to ask him about his loss. I didn't, though. I thanked him for the words that really were comforting to me. I pray that there is a heaven. My mother deserves more than she got out of this life. We believe in heaven, my people. After all, we are Methodists. Following her funeral, I was passing through town and I stopped. I got out of my car and stood next to it, looking at the town for the first time in years. People passed and most greeted me with a nod of their heads. A large man in a uniform appeared on the opposite side of the street. He gave a nod of his head and then waved his hand. It was Sheriff Jim Grant. He crossed the street and headed toward me. Sad day, young Joseph. We all loved your mother. I have a story to tell you if you have a few minutes to come by my office. It might mean something to you. I followed him across the street and we walked another half block to the front door of his office. We went inside and he took a seat behind his desk. I took a seat on the opposite side, facing him. He was the second source telling me why my mother left the Southern Baptist Church. Your mama was one of the finest women I ever knew. Yes. It was interesting for us to see that you chose to bury her from the Baptist Church. You chose to bury her in the Baptist faith. That's fine. That's good. You weren't in church when the pastor informed the congregation years ago that your mother had left that church. I was there. It was a Sunday like many others. The pastor took the pulpit and spoke. Friends, brothers, and sisters, it is with a heavy heart that I must make a confession of sorts. There was a serious incident I chose to ignore. People of faith can't ignore faith, but I chose to. But still, I am a man of faith. I won't speak of the incident. I must speak of its aftermath. Sister Juliet Jameson has decided she can no longer worship with us. She can no longer worship in this church. I believe the church has failed her. She believes that I have failed her. I don't know. There are sometimes difficult choices between action and inaction that we must make. I chose inaction this time, which was not the correct choice. I beg each of you to embrace Sister Jameson in your hearts and in your passing. Most of the most of the congregation seemed to be at a loss as to what the preacher was talking about, but I knew. The serious incident of which the preacher spoke wasn't a matter for the church, but the church was where your mother chose to take her stand. That was her right. This fellow Jackson moved back to the county after having been gone for some time. His family had left their land unattended while they were gone. Many folks were leaving the county looking for different lives in the city. He decided for whatever reason to come back. It was still his family's land in the eyes of the law, and he sought to reclaim it. The problem was that one of those Morrisons had laid claim to the land while it was unoccupied. Jackson confronted Jim Morrison and told him, "This is my family's land. We own this land. Get off our land." Jim Morrison came to town to see me. That boy pulled a shotgun on me and told me I'd better get off his land or they'd be carrying me off. That arrogant son of a bitch. Those Morrisons were nothing but a nuisance, always stirring up trouble of some sort. They were older than you. I don't know if you know much of them. They were always stirring up trouble. Sheriff Grant, he said, I need your help. I had laid claim on a piece of land that had been abandoned. The land had been given to this colored family, but they all run off. You know how them people is. I've been staying on that land for nearly 2 years. Now this colored boy is back. He run me off my own land at gunpoint. He pulled a shotgun on me, if you can believe that. It took every ounce of strength I got not to go back and burn that house down with him in it. I'm a law-abiding man, though. I know what is right, so I came here to see you. I came here to ask you to go off and get that colored boy off my land. I sat quietly for a moment, thought things through, and then spoke. You have your deed to the land handy? Let me have it. I'll go out and show this man the deed and inform him that in the eyes of East County, Texas, the land he was on belongs to Jim Morrison, and that Mr. Morrison desires that he get his ass off Mr. Morrison's land. Just hand me the deed. I ain't got no deed. He probably ain't got one either. It don't matter whether I got one or not. It don't matter what a deed says. I've been living on that land for 2 years. You can't just throw me off because some boy comes back saying it's his. You want me to go to the county office and see if there's a deed for the land? No, I don't want you to do a goddamn thing. Every one of them Morrisons was dirt poor and proud of it. None of them ever made anything of themselves. It would make you feel dirty just to look at them. He had probably tried to lay claim to a dozen pieces of property over the years. He couldn't seem to understand that there wasn't any such thing as squatters' rights anymore. Folks leave the land they own, they can come back at any point and reclaim it, just as if they had never left. I, I had too much tact to tell Jim Morrison to get the hell out of my office and to go and find some other piece of land to try to lay claim to. I'm not sure why Jim Morrison had left his family's place. It was plenty run down, but it was good enough for someone with no place to go. He was the youngest of them boys and the craziest as well. Every so often, their mother would get sick of a lot of them and come to me to run them off her property. I don't like getting mixed up in family business. I'd drive her back to the farm, call her and those four boys of her into a room, talk their disagreements out with them. It was never about anything. She wanted them to go off on their own, give her some peace. You can imagine what a ruckus four boys would cause. They could always talk things through. She'd give them a little more time, and they'd promise to use the time wisely. Well, Jim Morrison left my office and went directly to his family's place. He was plenty angry and had barely walked through the door when he started his story about this trouble he had had with the colored man and about my having refused to do what was right and help him out. It didn't take long before he and his brothers had his brothers as riled up as he was. The idea of burning the colored man out was thrown into conversation a few times. A few other ideas were thrown in. There was one thing that was decided for sure. Something must be done. A few days passed, but the anger of that Morrison trash stayed. The Morrisons decided something had to be done at once to save their good family name. Like the name Morrison ever got more than a scowl from decent folks. I heard all this from their mama herself. Later, there was a problem with her and them, and she came to me to get them off her family lane. I don't like getting into family business, but folks don't seem to ever hesitate to try to get me involved. The story goes on as their mama told it. That same night, Sunday, the day of our Lord, all hell broke loose. Morrisons got into their heads that they would dress up in Klan get up. You know, the white sheets and white hoods, and they would go off and frighten this man off the land and probably out of the country, out of the county. Knowing them, the white sheets were a filthy off-white color. Klan never caught on in this county. A healthy dose of indifference would usually cure the cancer brought by outsiders into our county. Trying to spread the influence of the Klan, indifference, and understanding that I place peace and quiet above all else. Anyone seeking to start a war of any kind in this county would have been starting a war with me. But the folks here are good, peaceful folk. Still, those Morrisons thought it necessary to dress up in white suits and give this fellow a scare. I guess they thought it was deserved that he had it coming. I can't believe that they ever had any intention of hurting him or anyone else, though. This entire time that Mama was telling me all this, I wanted to just tell her, "Go on home. I don't need to hear all this. I'll get them off your land." But she went on. The Morrison boys, her sons, waited until the darkest part of night, about an hour before sunrise. They crept up to the house. They had several bottles filled with kerosene. One of them lit the piece of cloth that extended from one of the bottles and threw the bottle through one of the house's front windows. They all started whooping and hollering, enough to frighten the dead, is how their mother put it. I guess they had forgotten about the colored man's shotgun. He came through the front door firing. No one knows what he was firing at exactly. He didn't hit anyone. And you're familiar with a double barrel shotgun. You fire them twice, once from each barrel, and you have to crack them open to reload them. Unfortunately for Jackson, while his shotgun was cracked, one of the Morrisons jumped in from behind. From what I heard, he put up quite a fight against four Morrisons, but he was fighting a losing battle. He soon was overtaken, or he was too tired to fight anymore. They got him face down on the ground and tied his hands behind his back. I never heard which one of them said it, but the story goes that someone said the words, "Let's hang him." I know the Morrisons and their sorry selves, and I find it impossible to believe that any of them would take things to such an extreme, but I guess one of them did. They dragged him over to a tree that stood right out in front of the house. when they discovered they didn't have another rope. This is their mama that telling this, remember? By this time, the house was fully ablaze and attracting the attention of folks from all around. Folks were coming running across the fields from seemingly every direction. Morrisons jumped in their old raggedy pickup truck and drove off as fast as they could. When I heard about this nonsense, I was quick to the Morrisons' farm. They played ignorant. They said they knew nothing about the fire or a man almost getting hung. They said they would never forget about me siding with a colored man's word against their own. I told them, I'm not siding with anyone. Breaking the law is breaking the law, regardless of who does the breaking and who has the law broke against them. It's my job to keep the peace, which means I have to keep everyone in line, whites and coloreds alike. If I had any proof that it was you all who was at this man's farm, I'd either put your asses in jail or run your asses out of the county. You don't want to try me on this. If you want war, tell me now, and I'll declare war. They sheepishly looked around at each other but didn't say a word. A couple of days later, the preacher contacted me. What happened the other night, Sheriff? I'm hearing all kinds of things. Mrs. Julia Jameson came at me from every which direction. She says you have to talk to your congregation, preacher. You have to do what's right, she said to me. Her preacher. I said these things work themselves out. Sometimes it's best not to stir a hornet's nest. This isn't a matter you want to get stung by. I told the preacher it's a bad situation, but I have a handle on it. He asked, please explain that to Sister Jameson. You're her preacher. You should be able to explain it yourself. I'm just a man. Sometimes a woman won't listen to a man. A man trying to become a god. A god? We pray for immortality, eternal life. We're all praying to become gods, even though none of us deserve to live forever. What do you pray for, Sheriff? I pray to live a few days longer and when I die to go peacefully. Peacefully? Sometimes I doubt whether any of us deserve peace. I'll see what I can do, preacher. I hate to let a preacher squirm his way out of a tight spot, but I let him out of this one. However, I did not attempt to explain anything to your mother, Sister Jameson. The next Sunday, the preacher made his announcement from the pulpit. There was a rumbling through the church. From that day on, every time I saw your mother in town, I tried to greet her with an extra friendly nod of my head, and I never heard anything from Jackson. Never heard any word about him either. I kept meaning to look into the matter more, but I never got around to it. The sheriff said this wasn't a matter for the church. Ultimately, he decided it wasn't a matter for the law either. The frequent separation of what's right from what's legal causes much confusion, and some of us get lost in the confusion. But if you believe, you will always find your own version of what's right. And my people, we believe. We are Methodists. That's it.